Is the regular season now in jeopardy of being delayed? Are we going to lose some games? Plus, what does this lockout mean for us fans? All of that and more coming up on a Friday edition of Locked on Cubs.
You are Locked on Cubs, your daily Chicago Cubs podcast, part of the Locked on Podcast Network, your team every day.
Good morning to you, Locked On family. Welcome in. This is Locked On Cubs, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. This is your team every day, Chicago Cubs every single day. Welcome in. I'm your host, Andrew Bellis, and thanks for being with us today. For those of you that don't know me by now, I don't blame you. I'm the former public address announcer at Wrigley Field. I was the P guy there for 10 years. Now so happy to be part of the Locked On family, hosting Locked On Cubs. I love spending each and every AM with you. So cheers. Happy Friday. Got my Java in hand. It's a Friday morning edition as we get set to cruise towards the weekend. Listen, I want to thank you for making us your first listen each and every morning. If you're on your way to work, going to school, at home, in bed, wherever you may be, thank you for downloading us. We're free and available wherever you find your favorite cast. So thank you, thank you, thank you. Please keep checking us out. Check out our YouTube page as well, Locked On Cubs YouTube. You can look at me too while I blabber away if hearing me isn't enough. And on social, man, love to engage with you guys at Chicago Cubs PA, at Locked On Cubs on Twitter. We'll talk baseball, we'll talk Cubs, we'll talk lockout, all of that. Let's be respectful of each other's opinion, but let's have some fun. So please join us on all those platforms if you can. Awesome show today. First and foremost, what does this lockout really mean for us fans? We've spent so much time looking into the collective bargaining agreement, the player side, the owner side, the league, what should happen, what didn't happen, what could happen. Well, guess what? We're being affected by this too. What does this mean for the fan? You've got questions, we've got answers. Plus, CBA updates from Jupiter, Florida, two sides meeting again as we speak. This has been a big week. But first, before we get to all that stuff, let's talk some more fake spring training headlines. This is fun, isn't it? I love this idea. We started yesterday. Sahadev Sharma of The Athletic wrote a wonderful piece, I thought, on some headlines, and I use air quotes if you're not watching us on YouTube, that we should be discussing had spring training started like normal, or headlines that we could be discussing. What would Cubs news from Cubs camp be if spring training had begun like we all anticipated it would? I love this idea. These are stories we'd be analyzing if not for the lockout. So I want to paint you a rosy picture. So close your eyes with me. Join me now. Stick with me here. The sun's shining. You can feel the warmth beating down on your face. You have mountains and palm trees galore, grapefruit and Cactus League games about to begin, right? Remember, Cubs baseball should have been set to begin tomorrow. Feb 26th was the original scheduled day for opening day spring training against the Dodgers. And pitchers and catchers have already been hard at work for almost 2 weeks. Not really, but they should have been on the backfields of Sloan Park grinding. So what are we talking about? Well, how about Wilson Contreras contract status? This is something that Sahadev dove into that I love. I preached a lot about this early on in the lockout in terms of locking Wilson up. As soon as the lockout ends, things are going to get hectic. Let's be honest. Teams will want much of their full rosters in camp as soon as and as early as possible when this is all hashed out. That might not be realistic considering the time crunch, but it'll likely be no more than 10 days to 2 weeks between the collective bargaining agreement being ratified and camps getting into full swing. Now, with that in mind, is it possible for Jed Hoyer and company to resolve the Contreras situation, if this is a situation, maybe it's not fair to even call it a situation, by the time spring training starts? What camp are you in? You tell me. I'm a Contreras guy. I love the heart. I love the hustle. I love the defensive work. I love the arm, the cannon arm. And let's be honest, I mean, he's one of the better offensive catchers in baseball. Can he get an extension done? Do the Cubs want to extend him, or will he be traded at that point, or let to play out this season on that deal, see how it goes, and then dealt at the deadline? Keep this in mind. We need to finish the offseason, start spring training, and wrap all these loose ends before picking up where we left off once the CBA is ratified. So there's a lot to do. As you know, if you're part of the Locked On family, I have been on the Contreras extension train for a long time. Not sure where you stand, but Wilson and Yan Gomes are the best catching combination in the National League, period. No question about it. You can't argue me. You're wrong. No, I'm kidding. You're entitled to your own opinion. I like the idea of locking him up now more than ever. Here's why. With the designated hitter coming to the National League, you are afforded the opportunity to get him out from behind the plate more often. I know you want him behind the plate. You want him in his arm defensively and all the work he does there. But we've seen the leg injuries, especially towards the end of seasons and offensive production decline. He's tired and hurt. We need to get him out from behind the plate more. And now with Yan Gomes, you have the best number 2 option at catcher, probably in the National League, if not all of baseball. Better offensive production, longer in the year because he's fresher and healthier. Truth be told, the Cubs have essentially dealt with situations and distractions like this for years now. If you recall, let's turn the clock back a little bit. Kyle Hendricks received a nice extension before the 2019 season. If the pandemic hadn't impacted the way the game went and the way the world went when it did, there's a really, really good chance that Javi Baez would still be a Cub because he'd be operating on a really hefty extension. Rizzo's sour extension talks became public after as they fell apart last year. So Cubs and some higher profile players, whether it was outside influence and circumstance or not, have kind of a history with this. So we'll see if Contreras is next in the cycle. This is definitely a headline we would be discussing if we were in camp now like normal. Ton of moving parts. We'll see how it all shakes out. Carter Hawkins, Jed Hoyer, from this podcast host, which means nothing, please, let's lock Wilson up. He's an integral part of this group, and we love him. I'm a big fan. Would love to see him behind the plate with the Cubs for a long, long time. As I mentioned in the open, we have talked at length about the lockout, the players' side, the league side, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. How about how it impacts us, the fan? Because quite frankly, the way things have progressed, we've suffered as well. So you guys have questions about the lockout, the game, what's going to happen, and what has happened. I want to make sure we answer those questions, and I'm going to do that when we return. Before we get to that point, I want to talk to you about Built Bar, and I know we do it every day. Have you had a Built Bar? I'm telling you, have one. You're going to like it. They're delicious, and they're good for you. The flavors are phenomenal. Cookies and cream, white chocolate cookies and cream, mint brownie, coconut almond. They are delicious. They're low calorie, high protein. You can do yourself a favor. Throw out the Twix, throw out the Snickers, throw out the junky candy bars full of sugar, full of garbage that kill your immune system. Replace it with a Built Bar. Most Built Bars contain 130 calories, 4 grams of sugar, 4 grams of net carbs, and 17 grams of protein. If you're a macronutrient counter, those are wonderful numbers. If you're not, take me at my word. BuiltBar.com. Visit today. Go to BuiltBar.com or Built.com, Use code LOCKED15. You're going to get 15% off your order thanks to Locked On Podcast Network. Built.com. Use code LOCKED15. How about your vehicle? Is your car running okay? With the ever-increasing number of makes and models, it's now impossible for your local auto parts store to stock all the parts you need. Save time and money. Use Rock Auto. Why spend more? You could spend 30, 50, even 100% less for the same parts at Rock Auto that you would compared to your dealer or local auto parts store. They're a family business serving do-it-yourselfers for over 20 years. Rock Auto prices are reliably low and the same for every customer. Plus, they have everything you'll need for your car: brake parts, tail lamps, motor oil, even new carpet. Go to rockauto.com right now. See all the parts available for your car or truck, right Locked On in their How Did You Hear About Us box, so they know we sent you. Amazing selection, reliably low prices, all the parts you'll ever need. rockauto.com. Lockout questions, how it affects us, the fan. You've got questions. I've got answers. Stick around. This is Locked On Cubs. Welcome back in. Good morning. Happy Friday. I'm Andrew Bellis, and I'm your host, Locked On Cubs, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, free and available on all podcast platforms. Wherever you find yours, please check us out. Check us out on YouTube as well, Locked On Cubs YouTube channel. That way you can do more than just hear me blabber. You can look at my gray hair too. So that's a plus for you. Also on social media, love to engage with you guys at Chicago Cubs PA, at Locked On Cubs on Twitter. Please, let's be respectful of one another, but let's have some fun on social media as well. I want to thank you for taking the time each and every day, whether you go to work, whether you're at home, home office, taking the kids to school, maybe you're going to school, for making us your first listen of the morning. Locked On MLB podcast, Locked On MLB prospects. If you haven't checked out this Locked On podcast, do it. Host Lindsey Crosby is a prospect encyclopedia, and he's going deep on the MLB stars of tomorrow, like a lot of the Cubs guys we've been talking about, Brennan Davis, et cetera, et cetera. Free and available wherever you get your cast. Check it out. I think you'll really enjoy it. So I said in the open and in the teaser before we took a little time away that we've focused so much on these two sides of the lockout. We haven't focused enough on us, the fan, and I truly believe that. We've talked about the negotiating, what should happen, why a deal isn't getting done. And this has been ongoing since the first week of December when all this nonsense started. How does this affect our season prep as fans? We're affected by this as well. You've got questions, we've got answers. One I get all the time: why are we here? Because let's face it, there's a lot of intricate details that have gone into this process that a lot of fans don't want to bother themselves with. And quite frankly, I totally understand that. We're here for several reasons. One, a significant increase in the minimum salary for all players during their first 3 years of service time. Two, the first ever bonus pool to reward high-performing players who've yet to reach salary arbitration, so to get them more coin. This proposal, along with the increase in minimum salary, would direct more than $200 million to pre-arbitration players over the life of the deal. So these are younger, less experienced group players, and the money pool, financial pool for them. Extending the DH of the National League, which we've discussed at length here on Locked On Cubs, that will be part of the new CBA, bar none. Implementing a new draft lottery system, kind of change the way the Major League Baseball draft has worked and is working, similar to those employed by other leagues, is kind of the route maybe they want to go. This would be a way to address the players' concerns regarding competition overall, league-wide. Also, an incentive for teams to call up prospects on opening day. This deals with the service time issue and holding guys back for that extra year of control, a la Chris Bryant 2015. And here's the biggie, which we'll get to later in the show as well, which is a big holdup now, even though we're 3 months into this. Increased luxury tax threshold that affects only a very small number of teams, while also accepting the player's long-held ask to eliminate the qualifying offer system. Example, the direct draft pick compensation, meaning you sign this free agent, you lose the draft pick, et cetera, et cetera. So there's a lot that goes into this, I know. And you're all over the map. From the DH to the luxury tax, it's like totally seemingly unrelated, but it's very related. Now to us, the fan. We know why we're in this mess now. Can I still buy tickets? Yes. Teams are selling and disseminating tickets for the 2022 season. So if you're a Cubs fan, you can get your tickets. The plan is to still play a regular season full, probably at, compared to any other point in this whole process, at the highest level of being in jeopardy right now. As we said before, the league has stated, and whether this is a bargaining ploy or not, that Feb 28, which is ticking away, is the deadline to have a deal done before the regular season is impacted and we lose games. So, clock, you hear it ticking? You can either get a full refund or a credit for a future game for spring training tickets that you've already bought that get canceled. So, no worries there. Now, back to the game itself, and we've discussed this a little bit briefly. How is this impacting the rest of what would have been the offseason, say, and other player transactions? Because let's face it, there's a hell of a lot of good players out there that don't have homes, right? During a work stoppage in the league, teams are not permitted, as you probably already know, to sign free agents, offer contract extensions and renegotiations, waive, option, or release players, or conduct any type of trades. Additionally, salary arbitration and the Major League Rule 5 draft have been put on hold pending the new CBA. So in terms of transactions, players, teams together, kaput, nada, which is why, obviously, you haven't heard, where did Freddie Freeman end up? Because he can't end up anywhere right now. The league has locked out the business operations in that regard. When will spring training start? We have been told that although Major League Baseball is working to reach an agreement with the Players Association and vice versa, although it might not seem like it at times, spring training will now start no earlier than March 5th. Again, Cubs were scheduled to play game 1 of the Cactus League on their schedule mañana against the Dodgers. That has already been pushed back. Will the regular season be pushed back? It is now a very real possibility that games could be lost due to this work stoppage. This is a very frequent question and a great one. Can players hold their own practices and workouts during the lockout? Here's the answer. Players are allowed to work out on their own and follow a team's set workout plan that were developed prior to the stoppage, but they're not allowed to share updates with or receive feedback from coaches or trainers about their off-season training, including strength and conditioning activities. So if the training program was implemented, say, November 30th of 2021, and said player is executing that program at home, fine. You cannot discuss it with anyone else in the organization in terms of coaches and training staff, etc. Team personnel are also prohibited from providing instructional videos or other aids for players to use on their own. What does this mean for the minor leagues? Well, the 2022 minor league season and players who are not on the 40-man roster or signed to a major league contract will be unaffected entirely. This lockout has no effect on players not on the 40-man roster or players not assigned to a major league contract. Minor league teams will continue to hold mini camps, minor league spring training, and extended spring training for all these players. Teams are essentially continuing to adhere to the terms of all professional development league license agreements and their affiliates, and will be operating their minor league operations uninterrupted. So, you're a fan of the Iowa Cubs. Guess what? Iowa Cubs baseball begins first week of April as if none of this has ever happened. Pretty cool. Hopefully, we'll have resolutions by then at the major league level, but we're still getting baseball at the minor league level, regardless of what happens with the new CBA. So there you go. At this point, as I'm sure you have, I've spoken to so many that are already soured by all of this. And my hope is that they don't turn their back on the game, because it's not the best look. This has been drawn out much longer than all of us expected. And quite frankly, I understand a lot of fans are ticked off. I hope that helps you understand how it kind of affects us moving forward as fans of the game and of the Cubs. And I hope we were able to answer some of your questions. If you have more questions, reach out on Twitter at Chicago Cubs PA, at Locked On Cubs. Happy to answer them if we know the answer. If we don't, well, hey, we'll just go ahead and make one up. I kid. Lockout update, CBA update coming up shortly. Two sides meeting as we speak. Before we get there, I know football season's over, but basketball's in full steam, both pro and college hoops. From all the latest odds, totals, player performance props, to where the next fired coach is going to land, BetOnline.net is the number one spot for all of your betting needs. BetOnline remains the best spot for all your sports scores, podcasts, and news all season long. And it's not just basketball. BetOnline.net is your source for hockey, boxing, and UFC odds, right to the Olympic coverage and more, only at betonline.net. Head to the website today or use their convenient mobile site to learn more about the trends in action that are going to help you. Bet online, where the game starts. Locked On Cubs returns after this. Happy Friday, everybody. Welcome back in Locked On Cubs. I'm your host, Andrew Bellison. Thank you so much for taking the time to start your weekend early here on a Friday with us as we get set to wrap this one up. A great week, and honestly, one of the better weeks in terms of negotiations between the Major League Baseball Players Association, the owners, and the league. All of the groups are in Jupiter, Florida with player representation and have met face-to-face every day, are currently actually meeting face-to-face as we speak. This has been the most communication and bargaining we have had since the lockout was imposed back in the first week of December. So these have not been 15-minute ordeals either. They've been hours long. Here's what we know. The two sides are still very far apart, but one of the most important factors that is going to go through this is the CBT. Teams meeting again as we speak, as they have all week. Jeff Passan details this on Twitter very well, and I'd like to highlight some of his points regarding the CBT. Neither the league nor the union has addressed the competitive balance tax, which essentially, according to all the experts, is going to be vital to determine whether or not opening day is March 31st or not. So we've alluded to a lot of the other factors that are going into this new CBA, the designated hitter, the et cetera, et cetera. We just discussed them as to why we're here in the first place, service time, et cetera. The CBT, or the competitive balance tax, is probably the biggest factor that will determine whether or not the Major League Baseball season starts on time or not, and it is yet essentially to be discussed by either side. This indicates more than anything how deeply the league and the union are digging in. Both sides are waiting for the other, essentially, to make a big move. That big move is on this CBT, or the competitive balance tax. Without it, no deal by Monday, and that's the deadline for what the league says would allow the Major League Baseball regular season to start on time. So first, let's define the CBT. It's a luxury tax apparatus, this is by the book, that penalizes baseball teams whose payrolls exceed a threshold agreed upon by Major League Baseball and the Major League Baseball Players Association during collective bargaining. Its current form arrived in 2002, so this dates back 20 years now, as a way to restrain excessive spending. Kind of like a salary cap, but not really. If you exceed this threshold, you're taxed on the amount that you exceed. It does a lot more than that, however. Here's some fun facts from Jeff Passan. This is really good stuff. In 2021, the threshold was $210 million. The union has asked for it to jump to $245 million this year, then 252, 259, 266, 273 in the final year of the CBA. Major League Baseball is offering $214 million this year, then 214, 216, 218, and 222. So by the final year of the collective bargaining agreement, there would be almost a $50 million discrepancy between what the league has suggested and what the players have suggested. There are monetary and non-monetary penalties for exceeding it, so it's not just a tax. Players want to get rid of the loss of draft picks and offered monetary status quo. 20% tax over the threshold, 32% tax when you're 20 to 40 million over, 62.5% tax on 40 million plus. Major League Baseball wants to essentially double the tax rates, 50, 75, 100. So it would be a staggered penalty financially for how far you blow past that threshold, or cap, we'll call it. The union believes Major League Baseball's offer is worse than the old CBT, which sunset essentially disappeared with the expiration of the last deal. So the union's correct. A $214 million threshold with worse taxes would be a step backwards. And although it might not be a huge surprise, Major League Baseball doesn't want to pay the players any more than they're making now. So the league says that the CBT is important for competitive balance reasons, even though from 2011 to 2019, there was no correlation between payroll and wins. Jeff did the math, and this is the guy that we can trust on his numbers. This much is also true. Every World Series winner during that time started the season with a top 11 payroll. So there you go. Interesting facts. The collective bargaining tax is going to be a huge determination of whether the CBA can be hashed out here in the near future and whether or not the regular season is going to be in jeopardy. We hope that's not the case, but as it goes right now, it doesn't look like the best because neither side has decided to hop on board and really grab that issue by the horns. We'll see. We head to the weekend. We thank you for making us your first listen every day, and we ask you to make your second listen Locked On MLB. Paul Francis Sullivan, please call him Sully, brings you his unique perspective on the major leagues, past and present. It's free and available wherever you download your favorite cast, just like Locked On Cubs. If we have updates over the weekend regarding this deal or lack thereof, we promise to share it with you on social media. So please keep tabs on us all weekend long for the best and quickest updates regarding the CBA. Until then, we'll talk to you next week. More Cubs baseball. Have a great weekend. We love you. This has been Locked On Cubs. I'm Andrew Bellison.